Here we go. Week 5. We just wrapped it up. Which team is gaining ground while which team is losing ground week by week? And who's the best team in the league? The recap. Let's talk about it.
We doing everything they talk about. You know I'm everything a boss about. Not putting work and gotta toss them out. I'm really biting, they just barking out. I'm really riding, they just parking out. His street, what to talk about. See the big H when I'm walking out.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Base Coverage presented to you by Knoah Teamwear. I'm your host, Jamal Clay, and we're about to recap and wrap up Week 5 in the ELF. We're almost at the halfway point in the season, and this was a week where a lot of teams in the middle created that separation, just like I had mentioned before. A couple teams, they're getting better week in, week out, and there's one specific team that's just losing it at the moment. But ultimately, we're gonna talk about it as we recap each game. We tied in our picks this week versus Touchdown Europe. Therefore, I am giving away some free gear because the tie goes to the fans. So shout out to our Knoah contest winner who will be getting some free gear on behalf of our partners over at Knoah Teamwear. Again, all you got to do to enter in the contest is follow Knoah, follow Athletes Forum, and just hope that we get a win or we at least get a tie because tie goes to the fans. So shout out to our contest winner who will be getting some free swag by Knoah Teamwear. Now, on behalf of that, let's get into the weekend a little bit and recap some of the games we saw this weekend. So, first one on the slate, we got the Berlin Thunder go to Cologne. And I'll tell you what, this is a tale of two different teams with two different philosophies. We have one team who wants to dominate the game, run the clock, and run the ball down your throats. And we have another team who wants to sling the rock a little bit. Ultimately, we saw which team prevailed. Kyle Kitchens made best friends with Jan Vainwright this week. 3 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble from recovery, and a touchdown. In my books, that's a player of the week type of performance. So he had a great performance leading that Berlin Thunder defense. One thing that did stick out to me this week was the secondary for the Thunder. Those guys played well. Those guys played really well. As a former defensive back, whenever you go into the game and you're going to play a lot of man coverage and you're able to execute that against maybe one of the top performers, wide receivers in the league in Quentin Pounds, and hold him to under 100 yards in receiving and no touchdowns, man, kudos to the Berlin Thunder secondary and their defense for getting it done. Jock Crawford, another great game. I think he had 142 yards. The Thunder played well, and it was a good bounce back win. Cologne is a team that's going in the opposite direction, and their season is getting late early for them as we head into the halfway mark in the season. So I think and next week we got to see if they're going to bounce back. They just got to get better all around. I mean, a couple of bad calls, at least in my opinion, throughout the game. But this is just a different team that we're seeing than we saw the first 2 weeks. So we'll see if those guys can get it done. But really, this was a tale of two different teams. But we got to give the credit to Berlin, who came in, performed the way they were supposed to perform, and ultimately took the win versus the Cologne Centurions. Next thing we got, Istanbul Rams travel to Barcelona to face the Dragons. Not much to say here. Dragons, they handle their business and they beat the Rams. The Dragons are the hot girl at the dance right now. They're the hot team. People are loving, this team, their character and the fun that they play with. They're gonna have a tough one going into next week versus the Vienna Vikings. But we'll dive into that later in the week when we do the pregame show for Week 6. Rams, they just got to get to the basics. I mean, there's really nothing to say about that. Fundamentals, tackling, playing smart ball, complementing each other. I think Devin Hextall is their best offensive weapon and probably the best or one of the best players on the team. Zachary Blair's up there too. I said it before. I said it in my tweets this weekend. He could have a Malik Stanley impact if they're able to move him around and create mismatches with him in the slot. I think that'll give that offense the boost that it needs, but ultimately, there's more than that needs to be done for the Rams. Magic Zach continues to show why he's probably a top candidate for MVP in the league. The way he's able to improvise and break tackles and always find an open guy. He's playing at a high level right now. Him and Kyle Sweet, I mean, it's a connection like no other in the league. One of the top connections in the league. So it's good to see. The Dragons defense play well. 4 sacks, 3 interceptions, holding the Rams to 1 of 11 on third down. I had in my notes. I mean, this is a sound team, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare against the Vienna Vikings next week, and something that I'm definitely interested to watch. They'll need another performance like that in order to come out victorious next week, as they play their toughest game yet. But ultimately, the Dragons handle their business versus the Istanbul Rams in their Week 5 matchup. Let's head over to the Sunday slates. One of the top games of the week: Frankfurt Galaxy, the reigning champions, traveled to Innsbruck to play the Raiders. I called this last week. This was going to be a good game. This was going to be a game between two quarterbacks that are playing very well. Two teams that were gaining momentum at the right time. One of the big performances was from Marco Schneider, 2 touchdowns. I knew he was gonna have a big performance, especially in the slot position going against that Galaxy defense. It was a close game. It came down to the wire. It came down to the 2-minute drill, where the Raiders got to stop and ultimately stop the Galaxy and Jacob Sullivan from scoring on that last drive. But the Galaxy did keep it close. I think one of the biggest differences in this game is that the Raiders were able to capitalize off turnovers, scoring 10 points off turnovers throughout the game, and that led to that 23-17 victory. So good win for the Raiders. Tough loss for the Galaxy, especially as they were gaining momentum. Tough conference loss to the Galaxy, but we'll see how these teams are going to bounce back. Raiders are gaining ground quick as they're starting to pick up steam. Each week they're getting better and better. So a good win by the Raiders and Sean Shelton and the crew. Next, we got Russell Panthers versus the Vienna Vikings. Hey, man, Vienna's just a sound, efficient team. I mean, and they were led by, they were struggling a little bit in the passing game early. So they handed the rock to Antoine Wegman, who had 122 yards. I thought this game was going to be a lot closer than what it was. I thought, if anything, the Panthers secondary would be able to keep up with the skill positions for the Vienna Vikings, but Jackson Ehrman was cold, man. I mean, he was slinging the rock. He was putting the ball in places where only his receivers can get him. And he did what he had to do. 12 for 23 or 4 touchdowns. The man just got the job done. So shout out to Jackson. The Vikings defense. This is a sound defense, and I don't think a lot of people are giving this defense enough credit or even talking about them enough. I mean, this defense, they do what they have to do. They don't really let up a lot of big plays. They're very sound in their technique. Their defensive line is one of the top in the leagues. It's going to be interesting to see that D-line versus the Barcelona Dragons offensive line. I would give the advantage to the Vikings D-line, but there's other factors that's going to go into that game. And I'll tell you what, listen, I'm not breaking any news here when I say this. Obviously, the Vikings are, one of the top 2 teams in the league, but because of how sound they are, shout out to their youth program and their developmental system that they have for those guys, and being able to get those guys to this point and play at those levels. This is a homegrown team, and the talent and the chemistry from those guys playing with each other is really showing. So I'm excited to watch them versus Barcelona next week. But Vienna just came in, did what they had to do, and now they're on the Week 6 versus the Dragons, and probably it's going to be the game of the year. Next, we got Rhein Fire versus the Hamburg Sea Devil. Hey, ring that bell, man. Ring that bell. Hey, the Sea Devils ran through the fire. Glenn Tunga, he's top dog right now. 202 yards, 4 touchdowns. Eventually, teams are gonna have to figure out how to stop the running game. But until then, the Sea Devils are gonna run through Glenn Tunga. Both teams struggle a little bit with turnovers in this game. Ultimately, the Hamburg Sea Devils defense never really let it get out of control, or never really let the Fire get into a rhythm. Matt Adams and Nathaniel Robitaille, listen, that's a great connection. Nathaniel Robitaille is a beast, almost uncoverable. I know they connected for 2 touchdowns, but one of the things that stood out this game was the Sea Devils defensive line versus who I thought and still think is one of the top offensive lines group in the league, in the Rhein Fire offensive line. But they dominated, man. They got after Matt Adams and those crew, and you could really see that the Sea Devils defensive line was way more physical than the Fire offensive line, and ultimately it led to the big win. Sea Devils, they're just a team that's doing what they got to do. Sometimes it's pretty and sometimes it's not. But they're a team that's, winning games. They're 4-1. It's a team that, we need to be given a little bit more credit to. Even though they got weapons on the outside, they may not have to get those guys going, but it's going to be scary if, they do get those guys going in the second half of the season and what this offense could become, especially with, beast mode in the back there. So Sea Devils, they just handled their business. They were more dominant than the Fire. And again, they did what they had to do in this game. And they got a big win versus the Fire. And now we got to start looking at the Fire and see, are they going to be able to bounce back and compete for a playoff spot with all these teams that are almost going to be in the same boat as them record-wise. So that's definitely going to be interesting to keep an eye on. Last one we got, Stu Garciage versus the Leipzig Kings. The Kings always make things interesting, man. I mean, just when you think that, they're able to pick up some steam, I'm looking and it's 10-0, and I'm like, what is going on? So I couldn't wait to watch this game. The Surge definitely look a little bit different on offense with the new quarterback, Dante Van Deven, He provides a little bit of a unique skill set, allows him to be more mobile and, a little bit more opportunity on offense, for big plays. Hopefully the Surge have their guy. Within 2 seasons in the league, this is their 4th quarterback. Not bad for his first debut. Looked like he had a little bit of control on such short notice. But we're gonna have to keep an eye on this Stu Garciage team. I don't think I'm breaking anything when I'm saying I don't think they'll be able to make a playoff run, but they might be able to play spoiler and get rid of some teams early. And if I'm biting my words a couple weeks down, I'll gladly admit it. But I just think they got to such a slow start and they got a lot of ground to make up. But on the other side, on the Kings, listen, if no one's noticed, keep an eye out for William James. He is low key having a great season for the Kings defense. He had 2 interceptions this game. He's obviously everyone knows about the Kings front 7, but in terms of the back end, he's definitely leading the pack there. Jordan Barlow came in late in the game when they were down 10, and it was good to see him and the team get into rhythm and pick up some points and ultimately win this game. I think it was 28-22 or 23, but good for the Kings. That's 2 in a row for them. We're heading into week 6 now, so we'll see how things pan out, see who's going to be able to keep riding this wave heading into the season. So good win by the Kings versus the Surge. Well, that's all we have today. Thanks for tuning in to the recap. Again, shout out to our Knoah contest winner who will be getting some free gear on behalf of our team or our partners over at Knoah. We're heading into week 6. We're heading into the halfway part in the season. It's a crucial time, and it's not time to be slacking off if you definitely want to make that playoff run. As you can see here, if the playoffs ended today, these are the teams that will be in. So it'll be interesting to see, how we monitor this going forward. But thanks for tuning in. Tune in Friday to the pregame show number 6 as we head into a big week. And listen, we all know what game's ahead of us. The Vienna Vikings versus the Barcelona Dragon. Number 1 in the league. Top dog here. Who's going to take it? All right, that's what we're going to have to find out. A lot to catch up on. I'm going to definitely be watching some film before I make my pick this Friday. But tune in, and thanks for watching.
Hard work, they don't know about it. Hard work, they don't know about it. Hard work, they don't